Good evening and welcome to Primetime Lawmakers, GPB's nightly coverage of the Georgia General Assembly for Monday, February 6, 2012, the 15th legislative day of the 2012 session. I'm Scott Slade, and coming up in tonight's program, Governor Nathan Deal announces a new needs-based scholarship, REACH, realizing educational achievement can happen, will award $2,500 per semester to certain students for college. An onion isn't always an onion. The House passes legislation encouraging growers and sellers of Vidalia onions to label them as such. Use of the Vidalia onion trademark generates about $200,000 a year in royalties. We have more in our series on education this evening. Georgia's the recipient of $400 million in federal Race to the Top grants. I'll be joined on set by Georgia Department of Education Deputy Superintendent Avis King and the Director of Government Relations for the Georgia Association of Educators, Tracey-Ann Nelson. Find out how Race to the Top can help Georgia's schools. And in-depth analysis of Capitol News tonight. Nancy Badisher, education reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and Maura Walls of GPB Radio and the Southern Education Desk will be joining me live in studio. All that and more is coming up tonight on Primetime Lawmakers. As part of GPB's ongoing commitment to education and improving Georgia's graduation rate, we've been dedicating a good bit of time here on Primetime Lawmakers to understanding the issues, challenges, and triumphs in public education. Tonight, we focus on Race to the Top, a federal program that's distributing $4 billion in grant opportunities nationwide to support new approaches to school improvement. In 2010, Georgia was awarded $400 million to invest in education reforms in 26 school districts around the state. There are 4 areas that are targeted to the Race to the Top program. 1, recruiting, preparing, rewarding, and retaining effective teachers and principals, especially where they're needed most. Adopting standards and assessments that prepare students to succeed in college and the workplace and to compete in the global economy. Also, building data systems that measure student growth and success and inform teachers and principals about how they can improve instructions. And turning around our lowest achieving schools. Joining me now to talk about Race to the Top and getting a progress report are Avis King, the Deputy Superintendent of the Georgia Department of Education. She's in charge of the Office of School Improvement. And Tracey-Ann Nelson, Director of Government Relations for the Georgia Association of Educators. Thank you both so much for joining me tonight for an update on Race to the Top. So many people are excited about this when it came down. That $400 million was like manna from heaven, wasn't it?
Absolutely. But $200 million went to the state and $200 million went to the schools. So it was split between those two. And we were able to put in a lot of initiative, one of them being the teacher and leader evaluation systems that we are working on in our pilots with our 26 Race to the Top districts right now. We're going to talk a little more about evaluations and where we stand in Race to the Top, but the teachers' perspective, Ms. Nelson, how's it been going in those 26 districts?
Well, I think it's been a learning tool for teachers as they navigate this new evaluation tool, but it's one that teachers welcome and organizations across the state welcome because we have to improve student achievement across the state for Georgians. Including focusing on teacher performance. Sure. Teacher performance has to be a part of, improving student performance, and if the performance evaluation is used to improve their ability to reach students and increase student achievement, it's welcome. How have teachers responded so far, going past really one of the only metrics they've had so far, which is basically having a supervisor come into the classroom once a year? That's been about the size of it up till now, isn't it? So far, yes, but I think the cross-section or the metrics that the Race to the Top evaluation is going to include will help them to have a broader spectrum of how they get evaluated. There's some apprehension, but it's new, so it's part of that process. And working with principals and with the Department of Education to implement it, is welcomed. Oh, Ms. King, so how is it going now, school to school, these 26 districts, which leaves another 150 more or less in Georgia, they're not a part of the Race to the Top. Are we actually seeing some of these metrics go into place now, using some of these objective evaluation procedures? How is that actually working? Well, actually, the 26 Race to the Top districts are piloting right now. We did a really good thing because we brought all our partners to the table at the very beginning. We knew we needed to improve our evaluation system, so we had folks like GAE and Higher Ed and HR come and be part of our steering committees. And right now in our Race to the Top districts, they are working on the observation piece, which is the TAPS.
And it is a rubric-based piece that really helps improve instruction because it gives teachers feedback, and that's what teachers want. They want feedback on their instruction, how they're doing. It helps them to reflect. It helps them to improve because the spirit of this needs to be continuous improvement in order to impact student achievement.
So they're going to get a measurement more often than just a subjective drop by an administrator once a year.
Well, it's not going to be like satisfactory or not satisfactory. It moves from not effective to developing needs improvement, to proficient, which most of our teachers are going to be in that area, to exemplary. And, you know, some teachers may visit the exemplary area. They might not live in that area, but that may be a goal for them to move to. But I think the point is we need to give our teachers feedback. We need to give them support. We need to give them the professional learning. And this tool lends itself much more to this than the old evaluation system that we've been currently using.
I'm talking about TAPS, Teacher Assessment and Performance Standards. Ms. Nelson, what kinds of actual things are being measured here? Measuring how a teacher teaches could be very subjective. This actually nails it down to more objective criteria?
It has both objective and subjective criteria, and there are processes in place for throughout the year for that evaluation to take place, and have many different components so that there's not one thing or one person or one, you know, or just students who, if they get a good grade or a bad grade, will reflect on it one way or the other.
Well, you say many different components. Give me an example.
Yeah.
What kind of thing would you measure in a teacher under the system?
How they plan, how they deliver instruction, how they assess students, their communication, their professionalism, and bringing in your parent engagement. All those pieces that make you the professional that you are. And so that's one component, which is the TAPS, and then you also have the academic achievement growth piece, and you also have the survey piece. So it's multiple components that will form a teacher effectiveness measure.
Okay, you're using some education terms here. That's okay. The academic performance piece. Was that testing the kids?
Well, it is, and you're using for CRCT and 4 through 8 and your end of course test and your tested subjects. But we're putting in something called a student learning objective, and that's for your non-tested subjects, and that's where you put a pre and a post test in, and you use an assessment to gauge their growth. And so those are in your non-tested subjects because we have many subjects that are not tested. So we're working very hard on making sure these student learning objectives are comparable. We have a technical advisory committee coming in. We're working with other states to help us with this. It's very challenging, but it's good work.
Non-tested subjects.
Right.
I'm sorry, give me another example of that. I'm not
first
quite
grade. First grade does not take the CRCT, but you might use a DIBELS on a first grader to see where they come in, the pretest, and how far they grow, because that's the whole point. We want our students to grow.
I'll never forget my first grade teacher, Lurleen Wallace, in 3rd Ward Elementary School in Griffin, Georgia.
You do remember her.
I do, because she was also my dad's first grade teacher.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that amazing? And I'll never forget the first check mark I got on a piece of mimeograph paper where you had to circle the things that were alike. She said, "Bring it up here and we'll give you a check." I thought it was going to be paid to the order of Scott Slade.
Well, that is a perfect example of a professional teacher, you know, somebody who's dedicated to the profession and who's done it for years. And, you know, part of it is valuing that professionalism that teachers bring to the classroom, and that they're committed to being, you know, to being good teachers for their students.
Do teachers think this process is fair? This is some scrutiny they haven't had in a while.
I mean, I think there's some apprehension by educators, as it should be for anybody who's going to be evaluated, you know, because you worry about fairness, you worry about the subjectivity part of it. But I think the matrix is broad enough that the subjectivity isn't defined to one area, and they can trust that if the training component of how the evaluation tool is used is done properly, that they'll feel confident.
If it's just not shoved at them.
Exactly.
If there's an actual process. Is there an actual process they're going through?
Absolutely. We have 18 trainers out in our Race to the Top districts working with them on a daily basis. And we are getting feedback. We're actually making visits to all the Race to the Top districts, talking to leadership, talking to teachers. And what we're hearing is, yes, it is very overwhelming at first, but then the dialogue turns to instruction, and that's a good thing. When they start looking at student work and they start looking at how they're instructing students, they get excited. So it's hard work, but we've heard some really good comments from teachers that said, I was overwhelmed at first, but our conversation's changing at our school.
Change is hard. I mean, it is, especially complicated change is tough. And there's been a lot of complaints in the past on high stakes testing.
Yes.
Because teachers understandably teach to the test instead of teaching the subject matter. You know, does this start defeating that because this testing is just part of the overall measurement of a teacher?
It's just one component.
It's one component, and I think because you have the multiple measures, that it's a much fairer, it's a much richer story of what's going on in that classroom, and it should be for those teachers and for those students. Every student deserves a great teacher, and they deserve a great leader in that building. There
have been some complaints in the past that there wasn't enough data to support teacher evaluations affecting student achievement. How about addressing that? Do we finally have some studies, some data that actually show that this is going to be reflected in how much better a child does, whether the teacher just keeps his or her job?
Well, you know Bill and Melinda Gates, they're very involved in educational reform, and they just came out with a Gates-Met report that we just got that actually looks at the combination of all these components, and they say it does impact student achievement. One component by itself does not, but when you put all three together, it helps to impact student achievement. So we did get that validation, and we were very glad to know that we are heading in the right direction according to that research.
And the teacher's component in all this, I mean, working with students, I mean, are they able to reduce the anxiety in the students somewhat when the students might know that they might actually be part of the evaluation process?
Well, I mean, I think it's a work in progress, and there's so many different components to the evaluation, but I think as we move forward, what we do understand is that the children bring different things to the classroom also. You know, some children have come from challenging communities or challenging households, and so how teachers try to work through those challenges as, you know, layered with the evaluation is going to be important.
Is that pretty much the bottom line? The teacher evaluation piece is the next part of it, and then developing metrics from the first data you get?
Absolutely.
Yes.
We will look at it this summer. We'll look at the different components and how it works as a system.
Okay.
And then we're going to do full implementation and race to the top districts next year, and we can bring 60 districts on board each year after that. Right now I think we have 15 or 16 that have signed up, and we're hoping to get more, and they will help pilot next year as well.
All right, so 26 districts to begin with. There's another 150 school systems. Do you see it being rolled out statewide? Ms. Nelson?
I think it is going to be the model that's used to roll out statewide.
Ms. King?
Yes, I do.
There's a nod. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, explaining where we're at right now. Appreciate you being here. It's a complicated subject, and we'll check back with you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more information about the Race to the Top program and implementation, visit their website at rt3ga.com. We've got to take a short break in Primetime Lawmakers, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, the best legislative analysis on the air. Education Talk will continue. I'll be joined by Nancy Battersher of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and Maura Walls of GPB Radio. They're both education experts. Stay with us. Be right back.